peekaboo. Alrighty, so this week, in quarantine, we are reviewing the play, The Baltimore Waltz, and we're gonna focus on the character functions of the many characters that you see in the show. So, Baltimore Waltz, the name sounds really cool. It's written by Paula Vogel, who is a really successful playwright, but it's important to note that this is like a true story almost of what happened. It's based on a true story of something that happened in Paula's life, and so it's a lot different than some of her other ones, because in the middle of writing one of her other plays, her brother passed away, which is why she wrote this play, and she like holed herself up in like a room and like wrote it real quick, and she just said it came to her differently than like a lot of her other ideas did, and I thought that was kind of cool. So she wrote it in 1989, which is the year after her brother passed away. So it then got its first like workshop performance in 1990 and went on to be in off-Broadway shows in like the 1922 and 1923s. Yeah, so what is the Baltimore Waltz about? The Baltimore Waltz isn't about dancing. No. It is about a brother and sister named Anna and Carl, and their journey through dealing with Carl being diagnosed with AIDS. Now, it's not super clear in the story. You know, you gotta do some background research to know that. Because in the story, Paula, who is representing herself as Anna in the show, kind of switches it in her mind that she has a debilitating disease and Carl takes care of her. So she like puts herself in his shoes to try to understand what he felt like, you know, in this time. And so Anna is diagnosed with ATD, acquired toilet disease, which is really weird. She got it because she sat on a toilet seat that one of her first graders sat on, because she's a first grade teacher or something, and now she's dying. Sucks, doesn't it? So, yes. So, her and her brother have always wanted to go on a trip to Europe, so they decide, we're going. And they're gonna try some experimental medicines and, like, stuff, which one of them is, like, she has to drink her own pee and maybe it'll work. I mean, sure. And, yes. And I think the overall theme of this play is dealing with like the stages of grief and dealing with death. So character functions, that's what we're focusing on. So the character functions. So there's only 3 characters. There's Anna, and there's Carl, and then there's the third man, which was a guest based on the movie called The Third Man that Paula and her brother watched a ton when they were kids. So it kind of like plays into like this whole fantasy of what's going on now. So the protagonist is Anna, obviously. And then throughout the story, there's only really one mentor that you see, and there's this public health official that's giving them like tips on how to fight acquired toilet disease, and they're really bad tips, kind of like how they gave really bad tips for people to fight AIDS back in the 80s and stuff. And then we have some threshold guardians, who are like the airport custom guys who like search them, and Carl's always trying to hide his rabbit, which kind of shows his AIDS, his gayness, that's what it like represents. And then there's the concierge is also one of the threshold guardians. And then there's the herald, who is the doctor who tells them a lot of like misinformation, but kind of gets the ball rolling, because he diagnoses Carl/Anna with this disease. And then we have the shapeshifters, who have a big role. And note, all of the parts that are not Carl or Anna are all played by the same guy, who is the third man. the shapeshifter zzz, in the show. There's a garçon, little Dutch boy at age 50, weird, Munich virgin, and the radical student activist. And then, oh wait, no, there's also Harry Lime. So the first four were all different people on their trip to Europe that Anna slept with to try to understand her brother's gay lifestyle, because at that point she thought, like, all he does is sleep with a bunch of people and that's how life works. And like each one taught her more about how being, like, having sex with someone isn't being intimate, and it isn't really what her brother was about. And then the last shapeshifter is Harry Lime, who is this guy in Europe who used to be one of Carl's friends in college, and tells him, hey, I got you some stuff that can help your sister with her toilet disease. And Harry's like, or not Harry, Carl's like, okay, let's go get it. So they go to Europe to travel and also to get this stuff that might help her. And apparently he's also a secret old lover of Carl's. And then we get to Shadow. The Shadow character's kind of like the antagonist people. And Carl is actually like who Anna's trying to overcome in the show, to overcome their like disconnect in language and stuff. So Carl is a shadow. And then another shadow is Dr. Todesrollen, who also represents death. And we have some tricksters. So the public health official from before, who was the mentor, it was also a trickster because he was telling them the wrong advice and stuff. And then the concierge, because he was also tricking them a little bit. The rabbit. Rabbit is something, his little stuffed rabbit, Carl's little stuffed rabbit. Little cutie. You see him throughout the whole show, almost. And what he represents kind of changes. So like at the beginning, it's kind of Carl's femininity when he was younger, because he couldn't play with dolls. He got his little stuffed rabbit. And then when they like go into airports, it represents his AIDS and the fact that he's gay, so he makes Anna hold it so no one knows. And then when they're like traveling Europe, it's his gayness and he shows it, and then other people show their rabbits, and then, I mean, you know what happens when two guys show each other their rabbits, right? And then at one point, Anna's holding it, and it like is her sexual power. She can like overcome all and like flirt and like be confident when she has this rabbit. So my opinion of the show, it was really good. The kind of like fantasy mind place was really cool, and I also really liked how it was all kind of made up in their minds and a lot of it didn't really happen, and how like the whole show took place in one hospital hallway. Like that was really cool, I think. And yeah, I would recommend this show to probably a lot of the people in the LGBTQ community and anyone who wants to learn more about the AIDS pandemic that took place, and people that have dealing with a loved one. Maybe this will give you a perspective of someone else's way of dealing with it and stuff. So yeah.